is Brad Stile. Brad is a veteran Toastmaster and works here at UT Dallas as an IT manager and as an adjunct professor of communication. He is also the coach of the UT Dallas speech team. Brad has competed in speech competitions in high school, college, and Toastmasters, winning more than 100 awards, including state and national championships. Woo-hoo. Today, he will be presenting Focus, Commit, and Never Quit. Brad, thank you.
Wow, there's a lot of you here. Well, good morning, Toastmasters. Good morning. Everybody have a good night's sleep last night? No. Got the nose. Any of you kept awake by snoring last night? Yeah, my wife raised her hand. I come from a long, proud line of snorers. My father could literally rattle the walls. I'm proud to carry on the family tradition. About a year and a half ago, though, my snoring apparently got so much worse that my wife, who also happens to be a registered respiratory therapist, told me I needed to go to the doctor and get a sleep study done, see about getting one of these CPAP things. So because I always promptly listen to my wife, I waited a few months and got an appointment. That was about a month after that. So I went in to see my doctor, and he checked me out a little bit and said, what you really need to do is go across the hall and see an ENT, the ear, nose, and throat specialist. So I walked across the hall and was fortunately able to get an appointment with Dr. Martino for the next day. So the next day I went back, and he did a full sonogram of my neck. He put, the goo stuff on it, the gel, like they do when they're doing an ultrasound for babies. And he went all around my neck looking in at things, and then as I'm wiping off the goo, he said, the size, shape, and coloration of your lymph nodes are inconsistent with what we typically see in a benign growth. I've learned since then that Dr. Martino knows how to turn a phrase. That was 1 year ago yesterday. And it started, kind of a life-changing journey for my wife and family and I. That was our introduction to the Big C Club. So imagine, 1 year ago today, we're scouring the internet. We don't even know what kind of cancer it is, or even necessarily that it is cancer, just that it's not consistent with things that are not cancer. But it was. And I'm not really here to talk to you so much today about cancer as I am the approach I took to fighting through it. Several years ago, my wife and our 3 youngest kids and I got really involved in karate. We kind of did it as a family. And when you're looking at a cancer fight, I think it's probably true for most people, you think of what you need to do to fight through it. And what I drew on was what we had learned going through spending several years in karate. One of the things I really like, now I have to preface something else here real quick. With the treatment that I've been through, it was kind of indiscriminate in what it got rid of. It got rid of the cancer. It also got rid of all my salivary glands. So I'm doing 2 things this morning that I don't let my students do. I'm using a microphone, and I'm going to be drinking a lot, but it is just water. So one of my favorite things to do when we did karate was breaking boards. Because, so for every time we did a belt test, we had to do a different board break. And it's really not difficult to break boards once you've been taught how to do it. but it's very psychological. To think about, it's hard, it's solid, and it can be very intimidating for a lot of people to try to break this with their hand or their head or their foot or whatever. But in order to break it, you have to focus not on the board, because the board is an obstacle. You have to focus on what's on the other side. And if that's where your focus is, breaking this is not a challenge. And that's the approach I took toward the journey I went through for the past year. And I want to share a little bit of that with you. I'm going to share with you briefly the cancer part of the journey. We're going to have a little karate lesson. And then we're going to tie it together. And then breaking through cancer treatment. Because cancer is nothing, it's the treatment that's the beast. And some of you, I'm sure, know that all too well. But first, let's just talk about the cancer and set the stage here a little bit. So I had a 3-centimeter tumor on my right vocal cord. I teach public speaking. The irony of this was not lost on me. How big is 3 centimeters? It's about the size of a good-sized strawberry. The good Dr. Martino, once I went back and he put this fun scope up my nose, which that's not a pleasant thing to have done, with a camera on it. And in about 30 seconds, he was back there and he found the tumor, and his ability to turn a phrase, he said, "Yep, that'll make you snore." I was eventually diagnosed with stage 4 HPV-mediated squamous cell carcinoma. There are about 550,000 cases of squamous cell carcinoma found in the head and neck area every year. Now, most of those are due to smoking. 20% of them are due to HPV, the human papillomavirus, which he said I probably had since I was a kid. But they are seeing a 200% increase in HPV-mediated cancers at the moment, and they don't know why. I encourage you, if you have kids or if you are under the age of 30, there is a vaccine you can get to keep you from getting HPV. I now strongly recommend getting that. They also told me I'd be dead by July if I didn't get treatment. HPV-mediated squamous cell carcinoma is a very aggressive cancer. My prognosis was good. Turns out that, and I am no expert, I'm no medical professional, but apparently the more aggressive the cancer, the easier it is to treat because it's not as stable. So there's a 92% cure rate. I was looking at 7 weeks of radiation and chemotherapy going at the same time. And the radiation would be 5 days a week, and radiation 5 days a week, chemotherapy 1 day a week. And I also got IV hydration every day. And then they said I would have an 18-month recovery. If you're doing the math, which I'm sure you haven't done, it means I'm halfway through that recovery period right now. I wish I was further along. I'm not patient. So the treatment. The oncologist said it is the worst possible cancer treatment. I think he just really, I learned from my oncologist, he really liked to paint the worst possible picture. So that way when it wasn't as bad, I guess I could feel better. But radiation to the throat, I mean, it burns. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to burn the cancer. But it doesn't just target the cancer. It kills everything around the cancer and getting to the cancer. So imagine having the worst sunburn you've ever had on the inside of your throat. also said this would be like running a marathon. It's not a race, a sprint, it's a marathon. Because as the radiation kills all those cells in the area, the body has to work really hard to regrow them. And I would need to provide for my body the same way a marathon runner would. I would need that many calories in order to heal properly. Specifically, he put me on a goal of 2,400 calories a day. And I track calories once in a while, and when I was trying to be healthy and would do about 1,800 calories, 2,400, that was a lot. Now keep in mind what I just said a little bit ago about that sunburn inside the throat. The last thing you want to do is swallow. And he told me I needed 2,400 calories a day, and every day I did not get 2,400 calories would add 1 month to my recovery. 2,400. I can tell you, I never want to eat another smoothie for the rest of my life. So this raised the possibility of having a feeding tube. Now apparently most people who go through this treatment start off with a feeding tube, because at some point you don't want to eat anymore, and you still have to get those calories in. I had 2 oncologists, one who handled the radiation, one who handled the chemo, and they got together and decided I was a candidate to not have a feeding tube unless I got to the point where I just really had to have it. The danger of a feeding tube is the muscles that you use to swallow will lose their muscle memory if you go too long without using them. And that's like a life-changing condition. They may never get fully back. The complication of that is if you can't swallow well, you run the risk of aspirating food, getting food down into your lungs, which can cause aspiration pneumonia. Now, throw into that the fact that, chemo, it kind of like destroys your ability to fight infection. So aspiration pneumonia is life-threatening if you don't have any white blood cells. So it was really important to stay off the feeding tube if possible. The other danger, which was very real to us at the time, was having a total laryngectomy, having the entire voice box removed if they couldn't get rid of the tumor. Really wanted to avoid that. So that's kind of what we were looking at this time last year. One other thing my oncologist told my wife is that there will come a point where he's going to ask you to let him quit. My oncologist said a lot of very wise and accurate things. He got that one wrong. I never asked her to quit. All right. It's karate time. Time to come to the dojo. Because this is where the real message is. That was just setting the stage. So, the title of my presentation here is Focus, Commit, and Never Quit. The first, and I think maybe not the most important, but it's very important, is focus. Focusing on where you want to go. Focusing on the end goal. In most martial arts, there's a belt system. You start out as a white belt and progress up through all the other belts until you get to the black belt, which is the ultimate goal. At the lower belts, you're learning techniques. You're learning how to hit, how to block, even how to fall down correctly. At the higher belts, you're perfecting those skills a little bit, but you really know them by now. What you're really learning is the mental side. You're learning how to control yourself. You're learning how not to be afraid. You're learning how to focus. And in order to do that, you need good teaching. This is was my daughter Kim and I with Grandmaster Snowbird. He was our karate instructor, an old school karate instructor, Vietnam Marine veteran. Yeah, he put us through it. But he was a great teacher. He still is a great teacher. And he put a lot of emphasis on teaching us how to focus. Obviously, he could teach the skills, but what he really did well was teaching people to control themselves, how not to quit, and how to have that mentality to get to where you want it to be. Good karate instruction requires good teaching. You also have to learn the skills. I classify this as commit. You have to commit yourself to learning how to do things. So if you think of breaking boards, there are techniques to it. If you want to be good at it, you have to commit yourself to practicing and learning. Here's my wife and I in the early days. She's trying to hit me. To break boards, there are two ways. There's power breaks and speed breaks. And some of you here probably have done martial arts and you know this probably better than I do. A power break, it's just muscle. That board's on something solid and you punch it really hard. Hope that it breaks. There are also speed breaks, which are really cool and very difficult, where you just can drop the board or there's nothing behind it and you have to hit it fast enough and just right, and you can break the board that way. They're really cool. You can do so power and speed. And there are different ways that you can do it. You can use your fist, what we call a ridge hand. Use your palm, your feet, your fingers, your head. There's a lot of different ways that you can attack the board. But you have to practice. You have to train. We have, our family, we had multiple reusable plastic boards that we would use to practice these techniques over and over and over again. It takes commitment if you want to be good at it. The last part is never quitting. And I put this down with team. If you're never going to quit, why? What's your motivation to not quit? Your team in karate are the ones that will hold the board for you. Here's 3 of us holding the board for somebody else to break it. If we're not holding that board, he can't do it. It requires the support of those around you. Your team is also the ones encouraging you to do it. It was always a lot of fun when the little kids would break their first boards. And they were smaller, they weren't as hard to do. But everybody else in the dojo would be cheering them on and encouraging them. And for a lot of them, they would not have gotten the breaks had they not had all these people saying, you can do it, you got it. You need encouragers. This falls under never quit, because when you have these people encouraging you and also holding you accountable, you're not going to want to let them down. You're going to do it for them, even if you don't want to do it yourself. It's hard to quit when lots of people are watching. There are a couple problems when it comes to breaking boards that we need to address. First one is fear. If you're thinking about hitting this, you're going to be thinking that's going to hurt. Fear is the real challenge. If you're focusing on how much it's going to hurt if you hit this, you're not going to break it, because the fear will stop you. The other item is focus. I've talked about that already, but if your focus is right here, if that's where you're looking, And when I would hold boards, especially for the little kids, I could tell right away if they were gonna break the board or not, because they were looking at it. Your focus has to be behind the board. If I was holding this for someone, I would say, hit me in the chest, and that's where you need to look. If your focus is on the pain, or the anticipated pain, you're not going to do it. Right? We had a phrase called parachuting. Someone would come to hit the board, and it was like this parachute came out the back of their hand and slowed it down just before they hit it. Just like on the back of a drag race car. It just suddenly slowed down. So think about the physics of this real quick. If you hit the board and the power of your hand breaks the board, all that power is dissipated through the board. If you hit the board and it doesn't break, that power bounces back off the board in your hand, and yeah, that hurts. It only hurts if you don't break the board. If you break the board, you're fine. But if you're focusing on the obstacle and not on the goal, you're not going to break it. Follow these rules in karate. Here's our family at the tournament. Get lots of cool hardware. But having the training, the technique, and the focus can yield great results in karate, and it can do it for cancer too. So let's apply this. First of all, so my treatments went from February 26th to April 16th, 2018. This is the radiation machine. That's me laying on the radiation machine, laying under it, before the technician walked out and closed a 16,000-pound door behind him. Now, one of the things, I gotta talk about this a little bit because, see that thing over my head? When I went in before treatment started, they took this mesh piece of plastic, got it really hot so it was soft, and covered my face with it and pressed it down really tight and let it harden. And every time then I would go in, they would put that thing on me and fasten it down because they didn't want me to move at all. I could not blink, couldn't blink my lips. If you have claustrophobia, this is torture. Fortunately, I didn't. I hated that mask. Everybody hates that mask. They give it to you when you're done, and some people blow them up. I have mine on a shelf in the closet, and every once in a while it falls down and scares my wife. As I was starting this, some of you have probably seen the movie Deadpool. This guy who gets his superhero powers from after he gets cancer and goes through treatment stuff. So I'm thinking this is how Deadpool started. But no, remember this thing is full of holes? I wasn't Deadpool. I was Waffle Man. But that's how tight that stinking thing was on there. And it was, each session lasted maybe 10, 15 minutes. It wasn't that long. I used it as prayer time. It just actually went by very quickly. Teaching. Here are my senseis for cancer. Great team. Love these guys. Dr. Young, Martino, man who can turn a phrase. Dr. Saez, who is not have the greatest bedside manner. But I was told if you have to go through this and you don't want to get sick, he's the guy. And he did it. I never got nauseous, never got sick. And Dr. Lubba, the pessimist, but he's not really, he just paints bad pictures. But awesome, Dr. Lubba. And that is the Texas Clinic in Plano. I know that building really well. Now, the technique. took what especially Dr. Lovett told me to heart. He told me I needed 2,400 calories a day, or I would have to get a feeding tube, would be at the risk of aspiration pneumonia, and all these other bad things. So I listened. You can't make out all the words on this. This is a spreadsheet. I tracked, with the help of my wife, the calories I ate every single day. I started, and this tracks my weight as well. I started at 190 pounds, thereabouts. The week before my last treatment, in fact, it was the day of my last chemo treatment, I went to see Dr. Saez, and you go in and they draw blood. They draw lots of blood. And weigh and those sorts of things. And I went in to see him, he looked at my chart and said, "You gained weight." Nobody gains weight. Up until the day before my last radiation treatment, I met or exceeded 2,400 calories a day. Now I'll tell you, the day before is when I hit the wall. And it was not that I didn't want to eat, well, no, I didn't want to eat either. I just couldn't. And my wife wanted the feeding tube then. Dr. Lovett said, no, he made it. He's good. But up until that last day, and I kind of hate that I missed that day, but it was tough. 2,400 calories or more. Some of those days you'll see is over 3,000. Dr. Lovett liked those days. But up until that week before, I had actually put on weight, committing to what the doctors had told me to do. Another very important thing, I throw this out there, the other big thing Dr. Lovett told me to do was use Aquaphor, the stuff you put on babies' butts, and put that on my neck twice a day. I saw people going through what I went through whose necks looked horrible because you get sunburned inside and out, and they were blistered and nasty. Mine never was. Simply doing what he told me to do. Committing to the regimen that they asked me to commit to. Having a team and never quitting. Said, you've got to have a team. It really helps. Some people aren't as fortunate as what I am. Friends and family got together and they made these wonderful Skiles Strong shirts. And the woman who made them sold quite a few of them. Pictures were popping up on Facebook all the time. When you have this kind of support, you're not going to quit. I know some people like to go through these things alone and not draw attention to themselves. I don't like attention either. But you're not going to quit when you have this many people pulling for you. Just not going to happen. The last thing you want is for your family and your friends to see you not give it everything you got. So there's a Caring Bridge website. We kept a blog going. When I couldn't write anymore, my daughter helped. Just to stay out there, keep the support, and keep the focus. So I need to tell you something about the focus. This started last February. So what was my goal? Our oldest son was going to get married in August, and before all this started, he had asked me to do their wedding. He was going to get married in Indiana. And here I was now in danger of not having the energy or even a voice to do it. And before that, we had plans to go to the beach with some friends of ours. So in my mind, my goal, my focus was one, to get to the beach, because that was a milestone. I knew I'd start having some strength back to do it. And then it was to get to our son's wedding. My wife put pictures of the beach on the wall opposite our bed. Every morning I woke up, and that's where my focus was. every time I went in for radiation or chemo, I wasn't thinking about the treatment or the cancer. I was thinking about getting to the beach and getting to our son's wedding. Every single morning, that's how I started. Again, you can't break through your obstacles if you don't know what's on the other side and how important it is for you to get there. There were problems I had to get through in order to reach that point. This is my last day of chemo. 7 chemo treatments. My family made sure I had a new shirt every time. So I had a blood clot. In fact, I'm still on medicine for it. They put a PICC line in the arm in this long tube, 42 centimeters long, from that point over just outside the heart. I had to have the first one out because of the blood clot. Lots of weakness. The chemo and the pain meds, it was dizzy. I was funny to watch, I'm sure. And then just, the pain, because it hurt. It was like swallowing needles towards the end. But I kept my focus on the beach. I kept my focus on getting to Indiana. This is the kids and the grandkids after the wedding. Good looking group. The best granddaughter hug ever. And then the stinkers set me up. Had the photographer come out to take my picture, and they all pulled out their shirts and said, but that's the payoff. Focusing on what mattered, committing to the treatment, and having a team that wouldn't let me quit. I'd encourage you all to think, what obstacles you have in front of you. Where do you want to be that you're not? And what's standing in your way? For me, this was an obstacle. Oftentimes, you have more than one obstacle standing in your way. And if it's cancer, cancer's not really the biggest obstacle. Chemo stinks. It does lots of bad things to your body. For me, the chemo caused me less problems than the radiation. They said, this doesn't work, we can't do this again, your body can only tolerate radiation once. I did not want to go through that again anyway. If I focus on just any one of these by itself, there's no way to get through it. Somewhere down there was getting to the beach and getting to Marcellus. When you focus there, there's no obstacle that's going to stand